to call to order this meeting. And before that, I understand that Director Martinez Beltran will make a statement on her remote participation.
Yes, I don't have that in front of me right now. I forgot all about that. But I am here doing for my board meeting for Cal Cities. Andrea, I know you emailed me that and I read it. You told me I need to make that comment. Let's see.
You'll be participating today under the Just Cause provision of the Brown Act is fine.
Great. Thank you.
Glad you're here.
Thank you. Me too.
Okay. All right. Well, next is roll call.
Thank you. Chair Showalter.
Here.
Dr. Tyson.
Here.
Dr. Klein.
Here.
Dr. Meadows. Here. And Dr. Martinez Beltran.
Here.
Thank you. All committee members are present.
Excellent. All right. So now we move on to public comment on matters not listed on the agenda. So the public may provide comments on any matter not listed on the agenda, provided it is within the subject matter jurisdiction of SVCE. Speakers are customarily limited to 3 minutes. Do we have any public speakers for public?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, well, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Bruce County.
Happy birthday +2. Carbon Free Mountain View participated in the Mountain View birthday Arbor Day Festival. And we had a lot of interest in some postcards that we asked people to fill out to the BACMED Board of Directors. And so I'm going to share our postcard with all of you and potentially with staff as well, if you would pass these around. There's space on the front to write a very brief personal note about why you support the adoption of Rule 9.6 with limited exceptions, and then sign it and put in your community and send it on off. The board meeting is May 6th. And Mountain View's, is he Vice Mayor Chris Clark, or is he?
Yeah.
Yes, Vice Mayor Chris Clark has taken Margaret Abe Koga's place on the BACMED board. And so I'll be getting on a call with him at 2 o'clock, along with Dash Leeds and Rod Sinks and others, to try to help him, or to make sure we understand that he understands how important an affirmative vote is on 9/6 to keep moving things forward. If anyone would like to make multiple copies of this postcard, just send me an email and I will send you the file, and you can print as many as you want. And I think this is a great simple way for people to get involved. As you probably all know, the Southern California Air District was spammed with robo comments that were artificially intelligently generated. They stole the identities of people who had never actually were involved in trying to contact Southern California Air Board. And so we thought that postcards with actual ink on them might be the right approach in this strange day and age we're living in. So thank you for the opportunity to share this.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for doing that. Okay.
And no additional public comments.
All right, no one is on Zoom. All right. That brings us to our consent calendar. That's an action item. We have 2 items on that. Are there any, is there any public comment on the calendar? Okay, so any comments with members?
I move we accept the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
I will do a roll.
Oh, that's right, because, excellent.
Thank you. Chair Showalter.
Yes.
Dr. Klein.
Yes.
Tyson.
Yes.
Meadows.
Yes.
Martinez Beltran.
Aye.
Unanimously.
Excellent. All right. Now we move on to the regular calendar. The first item is the CEO update, which is a discussion item. And we are only supposed to talk for 10 minutes.
That's a guideline. That's a guideline. Monica's only supposed to talk for 10 minutes. The bets are off for the rest of us. Right.
Good morning.
And happy Earth Month as well. I know that some of my team is here today because they're tabling an event today. And I know that some of us are going to go table some events this weekend too. So we have lots of Earth Day activities. I know we shared with the board kind of a printout of those activities where we're in your community the last board meeting. So hope you can stop by and visit with the team. A few announcements to make. First of all, we sent an email out earlier this week announcing that Standard & Poor's affirmed our A, or investment grade credit rating. But more importantly, they changed us from stable outlook to a positive outlook, which is a big kind of gain for us and puts us one step closer to being upgraded by S&P hopefully in the future. So as you know, we work really hard for our credit ratings because they're very important for us, especially as we negotiate long-term PPAs and long-term contracts. It helps us secure good rates and good commercial credit ratings. So super important, and a big kudos to Amrit and all the team that worked on that. I also want to just remind you that Cal CCA will be celebrating its 10-year anniversary, and they have their annual conference scheduled this year in Sacramento from May 12th to the 14th. I know several of you will be attending, and some of you that are attending, or all of you that are attending, have been invited to a VIP dinner on May 12th, which is the Tuesday, and that is to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of Cal CCA. So I hope to see you all there. Let us know if you need any help with any of the logistics, carpooling, et cetera, because several of staff will be there as well. And we're happy to make sure that we connect with you at the conference. And if you need us to direct you to some of the mini panels, I'm happy to do that as well. And then we also have a couple of ribbon cuttings coming up in June, including one for Sunzia Wind project in New Mexico. There are a lot of buyers on that project. It is considered, or has been determined to be the largest new renewable project built in the United States. And we are part of that. And so we're excited to finally have that project come online. Some of us have been invited, but they have limited the invitations for that event because they have so many people that are participating in that project. So I think they've only invited thus far 2 people at SVCE. I have asked that if there's room, if we can invite an elected official as well. Waiting to hear on that. And then we have really exciting news with California Community Power, which is a super joint powers authority that we formed back in, I think, 2021, 2022, made up of 9 CCAs in Northern California. We have our very first long duration storage project, and the very first one that was signed under the midterm reliability procurement order coming online in June. And that project is called Tumbleweed. It's with a company called Red Renewables. And the ribbon cutting for that will be on the 18th of June. And this is located in Rosemont.
Rosemont, yeah.
Yeah, Rosemont. And so we'll get that information out to you as well. Hopefully you can attend. I think they have a lot of speakers at that one planned already.
Lancaster,
Yeah,
north of
it's-
Pasadena, like an hour,
Oh, okay.
hour and a half north of Pasadena, I think.
It's called Rosemont.
Rosamond.
Rosemont.
Oh, Rosa.
Rosamond. Oh, okay.
I know I'm attending, and I think Chris is attending from the team. But if you're interested, we'll send you more information as well. And then with that, every month we bring a quick update on what's going on with the building. I'm going to put Zoe on the spot to give you a quick update.
Absolutely. So we were no live action pictures today, but they're similar to last time. That trenching's getting filled in. We are continuing to move forward with construction and purchasing the furniture. I think the last update we had, it looks like we might be about a week pushback than we were expecting. So not impacting our move-in date in a big way. We're hoping to be moved in July, be able to start moving in July 1st, looking like it might be that second week. July.
Okay. That's it. Great. Any questions on the CEO? Do we need a public, there's no action items. You need public comment on CEO update? Okay, any public comment?
None online.
All right. And I already asked about questions. Okay, so then we move on to item 3. Receive a report on Silicon Valley Clean Energy Committee vacancies and select vice chair of the 2026 executive committee.
Thank you. Good morning, committee members. As our chair stated, this item is to receive a report on our existing committees and the open seats and how staff plans to solicit interest for those open seats, in addition to selecting our vice chair of this group for 2026. As you all recall, we selected our January and February committees this year. And since then, some things have changed. So we wanted to provide a report on where we stand currently with these rosters. Of course, in this committee, we currently have 1 vacancy. In our audit committee, we have 2 open seats. In our finance and administration, we also have 2 open seats. And our 2026 legislative ad hoc committee is full with 6 total members. I will clarify that when I say vacant seats, that does not mean that we need to fill those seats. Our operating rules and regulations do state that committees should be made of no fewer than 3 and no more than 6. And so these check all the boxes here. However, staff has received informally some interest from board members. And so we felt it would be appropriate to open up that interest to all of our board members and see if they would like to join one of these committees if they weren't able to previously. The process in which we are proposing that we solicit this interest would be similar to what we've done in the past, and send an email out to all of our primary and alternate board members. You'll see I have an asterisk there, and that is to clarify that all qualifications for the executive committee differ from our finance and admin and audit committees, and that our executive committee membership is made up of primary board members who have served on this board for at least 1 year, while our finance and administration and audit committees can be served by primary members, alternate members, or member agency staff. So that is something that we would also include when we send out this communication, in addition to what the committees are and how often they meet, and things of that nature.
To clarify, that's a member agency staff, but not, we can have an alternate to our board be just a member of the public, and that's not true for any of the audit or any of the other committees, subcommittees?
Correct. Committees are made up of those 3 groups.
Okay.
Have we ever had a staff member be a member of one of our committees?
Okay.
Yes.
Tony Yulo.
Audit.
Oh,
And Tony Yulo and the audit and the finance committee as well.
okay.
And so our plan is to solicit this interest and provide those interested at our May 15th board meeting. And this is just a reminder, this is a special board meeting that is a Friday morning. And so I still need to reconfirm that we will have a quorum. We are optimistic that this meeting will happen, and our plan is to have these committees then reviewed and approved at that meeting using our standard voting process, which is to present the people who have previously expressed interest, open the floor for anybody who would like to express interest at the meeting, allow those to provide statements, and then do a vote by name if there's more than 1 person interested in a seat. You'll see here there's an additional option specific to the executive committee, and that would be to reconstitute a nominating ad hoc committee that is made up of our board chair, Klein, and our committee chair, Director Showalter, to recommend to the board whom should fill that 6th seat in this group. The alternative would be to treat all of the committees the same, in that we just present who expresses interest, and then we would just take a vote without a formal recommendation for that 6th seat in this group. With that concludes that portion of my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions and interested in your feedback.
And you probably said that, so excuse me, you went fast and my mind is going slow at the moment. So this committee, the executive committee, does not take alternates to board, so it has to be an actual board member. Okay,
And someone who has served for at least a year.
at least a year. As a more than an alternate?
Yes.
Okay,
Just has to have been on our board for a year.
right, not an alternate on the board.
That's an
but
alternate would work.
would an alternate work?
No, because you have to be a primary to be on the
That's what-
executive committee.
Okay,
So like in the case of Maria, she's
Yeah, that's what I'm-
been an alternate for over a year.
Yes.
And she's she can't be on the executive committee because she's on a primary.
So you have to be a primary
Yeah.
board member for at least, so it's not a board, it's, so that distinction's important, I think, but
You have
yes.
to be a primary.
Let me follow up, something I hadn't thought about.
Uh-huh.
Do they have to be the primary when we're doing the selection? Meaning right before, so it's like somebody could have been a primary and then maybe switch to alternate. Not normally the case, but
Oh, having formerly been a primary.
Uh,
would they then qualify? And I'm just doing hypotheticals here.
Yeah.
There's somebody who thought of all these.
I know.
Where's the flow chart?
It's-
Our operating rules and regulations are not that.
Yeah.
It basically just says must be a
Granular.
It's
primary.
all, I just hadn't thought, it's like,
Yeah.
it's always when you start doing the hypotheticals,
Yeah.
like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
they're alternate now, but they used to be primary and anyhow, okay, no, I'm fine, thank you.
So then another question would be, depending on what we decide to do about the executive committee vacancy, if we decide to fill it, we could actually wait until we decide who's appointed and then. So for the vice chair, sorry, I left that part out. So we don't necessarily, or this is a question, do we have to appoint a vice chair today if we decide that we're going to fill the vacant spot on the executive committee? So that's, as we discussed, that's another.
Yeah, we don't need to fill the vice chair. I mean, it is nice to have a vice chair in case the chair can't fulfill his or her responsibilities, but we don't have to. There's nothing that says we have to. Yeah. I know we have a couple of questions up there as well.
Okay, so maybe to see the questions would be good.
I just wanted to ask if you could repeat, Andrea, I didn't hear part of it. You said there were 3 groups. There was the primary, or there was the board members, there was staff, and what was the third group?
Primary board members, so primary board members, alternates, or member agency staff.
Okay. Thank you.
And Michael, you have your hand up?
Just wanted to confirm the operating rules are not specific as to whether the year of board service required for the executive committee is a full board member or an alternate board member. It's ambiguous, and it also provides for waiving that requirement if there are not a sufficient number of interested board members. So if we wanted to add one and there weren't any other board members that had that experience, we could still let in a board member without that experience due to lack of interest from qualified members.
And then one other you said we don't have to, we can fill, but we don't have to fill because there was a certain threshold we had met. Is that on all the committees, including the executive committee, or just certain committees?
Correct. All of the committees have a sufficient amount of people serving at this point.
Okay, thank you.
So do we want to have a discussion? I think we need to first about, do we want to increase the number of people in this board, right? That would be the first discussion. And then we do a conclusion about that. The election or non-election of the vice chair. So and I would
Can
say,
I clarify? We have a choice of, let's say we want to add a 6th person, we can wait till that person is seated and then elect the vice chair, or we could do that today, as far as I understand. Is that right?
That's what, yeah.
And so I would ask what the chair would prefer as a.
The chair of the board or the chair of the executive committee? Chair of the executive.
I would like to hear what people think
Okay.
about the need to have add another person.
Okay.
I mean, we're in April, so we're, a third of the way through the year essentially. And yeah, so
So more like half by the time.
we got another person added. So anyway, so I would like to hear people's comments about the value of adding another person at this point.
So I think it's important first, all these are minimums, but I do think it's important to add another executive committee member, especially since at least one of them is gone at the end of the year.
Yes.
So at least as far as increasing the executive committee up to 6, I think is important. I don't think that depending upon that person's interest, making them or allowing them to decide whether or not they want to put in for vice chair. So making that decision today, I don't think is critical. If they're interested, great, but a month from now, deciding on a vice chair to me is important. And then as far as all the other subcommittees, I think it's good to open up to see if people, since we've had some people drop off, because this organization is so complex that the more, even if you're starting in April or May, it's like the sooner you get exposed to all the information is important. So I think, opening it up for all these committees is critical, and adding that sixth person, especially from an executive committee standpoint, I do think is important. So
Okay.
basically that. And then the other question is whether or not there needs to be a nominating committee. I don't think so. I think, because of the requirement of 1 year on as primary, unless there isn't enough interest, which then opens up to everyone. I think having the whole board, deciding on who,
Yeah.
as opposed to creating a nominating committee
It's a
for a month.
relatively small
It's like,
subset.
it's one spot. It's not like, it's
Yeah.
like the whole organization.
People.
Yeah, okay. I'll get
So,
off my soapbox.
that basically sounds reasonable. What do you think?
I don't mean to jump. but-
You can, no, go
I
ahead.
agree completely
Yeah.
with what he said, and the further point is that whether we have 5 or 6 on the executive committee, we need 3 for a quorum, and we failed to meet quorum last month. Gives us a little better shot at making that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because 5 or 6 is the same number for quorum, so. Or is it? No, 6
Yeah.
is 4 for quorum.
No, it's half.
It's still 3.
It's still
Still
3?
So it
Oh,
gives us-
okay.
It gives us a better chance of being.
Okay, then it
That's a
does,
good
yeah.
point.
So I support opening it up, not assigning a vice chair today. Therefore, opening it up and then have the vice chair discussion. For succession planning, we gotta keep people with an opportunity to get trained and educated on. It's very complex subject matter. So this is essentially what you said as well. Yeah, one thing that I don't remember.
And the nominating committee.
Oh, yeah, I know, the one.
I think that's,
Yeah.
okay, well, I'll weigh in too, and basically I agree. And I think, in all honesty, the most important one to get people on is finance and administration. And the reason I think that is because it's so educational for the committee members in terms of learning about how SVCE functions and the financing. And the financing of SVCE is really vital, and it is not, the kind of thing that we all just,
Not balancing your checkbook.
no. Good way to say.
Yeah.
It was definitely it's definitely way above the level of my normal operation for financing, and I'm sure I'm not unique. So I think I would like us to each of us to think if we can do a little bit of recruiting for the finance and administration committee, for the people who are new to the board that aren't on it. I think it's important.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, do we need a motion?
I want to ask Yvonne.
And we also need to do public.
Oh, Yvonne, yeah, you asked a question, but do you want to weigh in after the discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think we should open it up. The more people that we get exposed and exposure to and give the opportunity to, I think that's kind of always the best way for us to move. So I think on all of them, I don't know if I'm certainly happy to try and recruit for these as well, but I think it's a good opportunity if anybody is interested. I know that we didn't have so much last time, but I think it would be good to open it up, let everybody, do that. Same with the executive committee. I mean, to the point that we didn't have quorum before, things change. We all have, schedules. So I think it's important that we do have the 6 if we can. So that would be good if somebody's interested in that. And for vice chair, sure. I mean, if you think we're going to be able to do it soon and get that, but I do think it's important so that we have, if the chair is not able to make it with scheduling, that we do have a backup on that. So, and I'll just say I would be interested in doing that again. So I'll leave it there.
Great, okay, thank you. Any more
One
comments?
further question. So it sounds like we're getting consensus towards opening it up and then potentially filling the 6th spot. which means we're probably not supporting selecting a vice chair today. In that eventuality, if there's another executive committee meeting, do we have the flexibility, if we have quorum but don't have the chair, can we pick an ad hoc leader of the meeting, such as the chair, board, or whatever?
Michael?
Michael?
I was just looking at this. I don't think it's clear in the operating rules of the JPA agreement. My sense is that yes, we could do that. That's effectively the same process we would use to select the vice chair of the committee, and the committee, could decide to change the vice chair if it wanted to, particularly if the vice chair wasn't opposed to the change. So yeah, I think if the committee didn't have the chair present, they could just nominate one present director, and so long as they had a quorum, that director could run the meeting.
Okay, so that's the downside.
That
of
was the
waiting.
only thing I wanted to confirm, yeah.
All right, so public comment? No, okay.
He's not gonna pick favorites.
Are you guys gonna make a motion or just giving us feedback?
Make a motion.
Yeah, I think I'd like a motion.
Okay.
If you need a.
Did it, Yvonne?
No public comment remotely.
No, I'm good.
Okay, so public comment is closed, there was none, and we do need a motion. I'd like to make a motion.
I move that we solicit interest from primary and alternate board members for committees with vacancies.
And defer the
That's all.
selection of vice chair.
Oh, and
Defer.
Defer the
and defer
selection
the
of vice
selection
chair.
of a vice chair. of the executive.
Second.
So Commissioner Tyson moved. Meadows seconded. So now we need a roll call.
Thank you. Director Tyson,
Yes.
Martinez Beltran,
Aye.
Meadows,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Showalter.
Yes,
Thank you. That carries unanimously.
all right.
We didn't add this to the motion, but we're assuming we're gonna try to get this done by the May 15th board meeting, so we'll bring something back on that 15th.
Yes.
Yes, please. Okay. Then we're on, and also I would like to, the recruitment, I don't think that is necessarily a formal thing, but we do know our alternates, and if we have a chance to sort of talk this up, I do think that's something we should do. And there's only, I guess there's 3 weeks until the meeting, so that's it. We're all better with the deadline. Okay, all right.
But again, they don't have to be, I mean, I just want to make sure that it's more about you want to have people, the understanding. We don't have to get anything else on that committee, do we? Is there a?
You're absolutely right. It's
Okay, I just
about-
want to make sure that
yeah,
I know the charge.
It's about educating,
Got it.
people. Yeah, so educating people. Okay,
So hopefully some of those that are active now.
yeah,
Right.
okay. So now we move on to 4, which is recommend the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board of Directors approve amendments to Human Resources Policy 1, Personnel and Reimbursement, and Customer Confidentiality Policy. And that's an action item, and our General Counsel, Michael Callahan, will lead it off.
Hey, everybody, good to be here with you. So yeah, I will be chatting about policy updates. We have a couple that the chair just read through that we're talking about today. And as you may recall, we do update policies kind of on the regular, and we bring them to the committee before they go to the board. And some policies go to the executive committee, some policies go to the F&A committee. And so these are a couple of policies for the executive committee. And we're proposing to change the human resources policy, personnel and reimbursements, effectively sort of the hiring policy, and touches on things related to employment, as well as the customer confidentiality policy, which touches on how we handle customer data. And the changes here are really intended to clarify delegations to the CEO and reduce the administrative items that go to the board, really to streamline these meetings and the things that need to be discussed here, but always at the will of the board in terms of where those delegations are. Next slide. So in the personnel and reimbursement policy, there's sort of the most changes. The first and changes to shift the appointment of the general counsel from the board to the CEO. So in the policy today, the board has the power of appointment for the general counsel. And again, the proposal here is to shift that under the CEO, which would effectively kind of conform to the practice that we're in today. There's another change to clarify that the CEO has authority to terminate staff, which includes entering into severance agreements. Currently, the CEO is the personnel officer and so has the ability to hire and fire staff. This would be clarifying sort of a delegation and to spell it out that they're able to do that and also, again, enter into settlement agreements associated with separation. The third option is to clarify that the budget includes staffing costs such as salary and benefits, which is already there. There's just some language change to make sure that we're including each of these elements. And it's sort of related to this last bullet, which is providing the CEO authority to modify the benefits for employees, except for increases or decreases in paid time off, like holidays, furloughs, bereavement leave, regular paid time off. And those changes still have to be within the budget. And so those are the four pieces for the personnel and reimbursement. Yeah.
I have a question because I looked at the verbiage here about the settlement or severance agreement. I believe it's still subject to the CEO spending authority. So it doesn't say anything about that. So, I mean, we're giving the CEO the ability to negotiate a severance. And so it could be a $8 million severance, or it could be limited to whatever you're spending. Is that
Right,
how it
that
works?
was the assumption, it'd be limited to my spending authority.
Yeah, so then that's fine.
Yeah, and we can make that clear in the policy. The spending authority is technically under a purchasing policy, so it relates more to sort of vendor spend and that type of thing. So I think that's something that we could add and make clear before we bring this to the board.
We didn't want to put something in there like up to $8 million because that's probably not a good thing. You
That was a very poor example on my part.
We can add a limit there.
Happy to move on to the next slide unless anybody else has questions on this one.
I do have questions. Like at the city, we have 3 council appointees. The city manager, the clerk, and the attorney. And at SVCE, we essentially have one, the CEO. And is that standard practice throughout CCAs or throughout utilities?
Throughout CCAs, yes, that is the standard. If you have in-house counsel, and not all CCAs have in-house counsel, we only moved to in-house counsel 2 years ago. And so, and Mike reports to me, and then we don't have an auditor like many cities have. We don't have an external auditor. But before we had in-house counsel, we had outside general counsel. And so we used RWG, and that contract still exists. And when we made the decision to move to in-house counsel, we also made it very clear that that contract or a contract for general counsel services would remain intact should the board need to use general counsel outside of someone who worked for me or myself.
And let me add, that came up when we were negotiating a new contract with Monica, that we hired an external counsel rather than asking Michael to decide what the terms of her contract would be.
Right. And then in terms of municipal owned utilities, I don't know what the IOUs do, quite frankly, but for the public utilities, most of them happen to be a department within the city. So to the extent that the city has an appointed general counsel or city attorney, then yes, it's external and it reports to the city council as well. That answer your question?
No, and that yes, it does. But it also reassures me because I'm glad to hear that there's this opportunity for us to hire an outside counsel if the need were to arise. Yeah. Kind of much like, this unexpected thing happened with our executive committee member. We could have an unexpected thing happen with
and the board clerk.
That's not a threat.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
No.
The board clerk, I mean, you always have access to the board clerk. The relationship between the board and the board clerk is also somewhat, even though she reports to me, you have access. So if you ever need to access general counsel for whatever reason, and you don't want to go through me, go through the board clerk.
Okay, all right. Thank you. That was my question.
And just to say it, the board, if you're ever interested in working with outside counsel on anything for any reason, I'm happy to arrange that and don't, need to be in the mix. And there may be things that I am directing outside counsel to do for conflict of interest purposes as well. So it could kind of come from either level.
Good.
So the next policy we're proposing to change is the customer confidentiality policy. Here, we're really changing one big thing. It's to, right now in the policy, there's a default retention period for customer data for 5 years, unless it's required by sort of law or other purposes. But the reality is that we need this data for load forecasting over a longer period than that. We use it for other business purposes like customer programs, planning and deployment and evaluations. It helps set baselines for things. And so, we need this data. It helps us manage our risks well. It helps us buy the right amount of energy and budget properly. And so we're adjusting that to be that we will retain the data effectively, for the duration that we need it, unless required by law. So it's sort of switching that 5-year period to making it, sort of as needed for business needs. That's sort of the big substantive change. We're also removing a reference to the data hive, which we no longer have available. Next slide. And so the recommendation is that the executive committee recommend the board adopt the changes that are proposed here to the personnel and reimbursement and the customer confidentiality policies. And the next step in the process would be for us to bring it to the board.
Great. Okay, since this is a policy decision, I'm going to try and divide the sort of discussion into, first, let's have questions from the board, and then let's see if there's any public comment, then we'll have that, then come back and have discussion. I think we have time, plenty of time for this, and it's important. Okay, so questions. What questions do board members have?
I already asked mine.
Yeah.
Going to the question of customer information, and this is always a big deal. And I didn't do a deeper dive on all the other I focused on the red lines and like, oh yeah, that's fine. But then thinking it more through, do we have any policy in place for like anonymizing names or anonymizing data when if we have to provide that information to a subcontractor? So it's more of a policy of, it's kind of like, it's the ad needed versus, as well as the, we basically anonymize wherever possible. And especially as that data goes longer, it's like, oh, look, we've tracked this person from this location to that location. Or, when we started talking about time of use initially, the question was, look, this person leaves Monday through Friday at 7:52 a.m. to go to work. And that's noticeable from their usage, their power usage or something of that nature. So we have issues of privacy and how that information could be misused. This is mainly about keeping that data longer, but looking at who we pass it to and how long we keep it. These are bigger questions. And I'd be interested to see, am I missing some policy about the rest of that? And I understand we have all kinds of security in place to make sure that nefarious people don't get this data. But as we're passing it to subcontractors, that's where I start worrying about data breaks and the viability of those subcontractors.
Yeah, you and me both. And yeah, so there's a couple layers to it. There's, as you're asking about, there is a guideline document. So it's not a capital P policy that's adopted by the board, but it's done sort of at the staff level. We don't publish it, partly because we don't want to sort of share, insights about how we manage data. And so that does have what you referred to, which is sort of like the least, the least amount of sharing needed for any data, and that's with vendors, but it's also with staff. So if you don't have a need to be able to access customer data at the staff level, you don't have access to that data. And if we're ever sharing data sets with vendors or regulators or anybody for the various needs that we have for sharing, it's always like, if we can anonymize it, we're anonymizing it, and we're always asking, what are they going to do with this data? And anytime we're sharing data, we're doing that under an NDA or similar terms that are in our vendor agreements, and making sure that folks have adequate cyber insurance and all of those things. So yeah, it's something that it's one of the biggest risks that we see for the business because of what you said in terms of how private a lot of the data is. Even just meter data, you can gain a lot of insights from that. And we don't necessarily have it at that minute by minute granularity, but regardless, it is very sensitive data that we take seriously. And so yeah, there are those layers that we take to approach, in addition to all the cybersecurity tools and things we have in place.
Okay, and
Mike,
from the big,
sorry, do you want to add what the CPUC requires us to do as well? From a confidentiality standpoint and data security?
Yeah, we're under an NDA with PG&E that's sort of governed by the CPUC's data privacy rules. And, that requires us to do the things that we would do anyway in terms of protecting the data with our contracts. There's also a customer data sort of audit and reporting obligation we have to the PUC to the extent any of that meter data gets out. And so, it's something that we take seriously. It's something the state takes seriously and are kind of watching us on as well.
okay, and just, I'm happy with the general big P policy description. I just worry, and maybe just a nice thing for a future policy change might be, a general, we try maintaining the privacy of our, and maybe it's here somewhere, the privacy and anonymity of that data whenever whoever has access to it. And just a general statement would make me feel a little bit better. And I understand staff is doing that from the small P policy internal, but stated somewhere in our general policy, that has value. And
Definitely.
whether or not it's elsewhere here or whether or not you think it has value, directing you to add that as part of the policy now as a high level umbrella would be useful.
Yeah, and I think I appreciate that recommendation. We will definitely look at the policy with that eye. I think there is some of the spirit of that in the language today, but I think if it's not abundantly clear, adding that does not impair us in any way and would be good to communicate because this is a public facing policy.
Right, and that's the only reason I'm bringing it up. It wasn't the focus for today, but I do think that's important. I'll get off.
Appreciate that.
I'll just to tag on to that, I see, the date, this is less than 4 years since this was revised last in October 22 and 2022. And, just how we think about data today versus that, not quite 4 years ago. Think about a couple of years from now. So I completely support including the gist of the importance of the privacy of data. Only going to get worse.
Sorry.
Well, I had a question, but you kind of answered it, which was basically, are there standard practices? And clearly the NDA with PG&E must function as a standard practice. And I presume that, or would it be right to say that, that those practices are updated to kind of keep up with shifts in the technology? So is the NDA something that is a static document that hasn't changed in a long, long time, or is it being?
I'm going to refer to Justin on the NDA with PG&E.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
The NDA with PG&E has been pretty static, and ultimately the data. The data is either in the line of confidential or not, and then you either have to protect it or not. And in terms of what's changing over time, a lot of it really is sort of the technology around it, the approaches, the operational approaches to protecting it. And so absolutely, we have a team that's grown significantly recently that does do that. And, I think we've brought in a lot of expertise on that team that helps us kind of keep a finger on the pulse there. There are some new things that come up in NDAs. Recently I'm looking at terms where people people don't want us to put any of their sensitive data into an AI tool because they don't want, that to be used to train the model, and then their sensitive data is available. It's, when you hear this issue generally about people, don't put your private information in your chat GPT. And so I think it's going to evolve to some degree on the NDA side, but at the end of the day, it's really what is confidential and that you cannot release it and you can only use it for these prescribed purposes. And that doesn't shift a lot based on kind of what's happening out there.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So I think that ends the question part. Let's go to public comment. Do we have any public comment?
Pat, I had a few questions, if that's
Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry. I didn't see. Did you raise your hand?
I didn't raise my hand.
That's okay. What is your question?
So I just wanted to, I wanted to clarify on one. It said for Monica that she would have, I thought, don't you already have authority to terminate staff? Is that just leading up to the severance to clarify?
I do, but our general counsel felt it would be better if it was explicitly stated in the policy, the personnel policy, that I have the authority. It says I have the authority to manage staff, which means hiring and firing.
Okay, great. And then as far as I know, we talked about the deadline or the guidelines on the severance. Is that explicit as well? Or is it really just staying within those bounds of the budgeting and your authority for the certain amount that Michael was talking about, like we use for vendors or things like that?
Yeah, it's not explicit. The dollar amount is not explicit, right?
Okay.
But I have authority only to spend in general contracting up to $250,000 per year. Right, so that would be the same kind of control that I put on myself. But as Mike mentioned, we could be more explicit. We just don't want to be overly prescriptive so that it changes kind of the nature of how you structure severance packages. If you lay out exactly what I can do or up to what I can do, that you don't want to do that.
Okay.
The other alternative is just the board was concerned about this. It could just all be something that gets discussed in closed session. Okay,
great. Yeah, I don't necessarily have a grave concern on it. I just wanted to understand what specifically it was, and it sounds like it's up to the 250. And then the last one was what benefits could be modified. It talks about modified benefits within budget. Does that mean everything or?
So the general benefits that we provide staff are healthcare benefits and some tuition and training type reimbursements, travel training type stuff. And so all of that gets laid out in the budget when Omrit brings the budget to the board for approval. But there's no specific line item that says, this is how much we're going to pay for dentists and this is how much we're going to pay for vision and for medical. Or we just have this personnel line item that includes all of salaries and all of the benefits. And so sometimes though, like last year, we decided to increase the premium for our employees because we were finding that we were way behind on premiums for medical benefits. And so we brought that to the board. We had to have kind of like a special meeting to do it because from an operational standpoint, we needed to make a decision really fast for open enrollment. So it's basically stating that I have the ability to make those decisions within the budget that we set aside for the personnel. Now, where I think it's not prudent to give me the blanket authority is to increase or decrease, for that matter, paid time off or time that people take off, because that goes directly to productivity. Right? And I think that's something that's more at the level of the board should determine whether we should give employees 60 days off a year versus what our current practice is, which is 11 or 12, right? Because there's something that just should reside with the board, quite frankly.
Okay, well, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. So especially, the premiums went up and everybody was facing that this year. And like you said, there were certainly quick deadlines and turnarounds we had to do. So thank you. Appreciate it.
And I just have a follow-up comment more than anything else. Especially when you're talking about PTO, you're increasing the long-term liability of the organization, which, especially as you add yearly increases in salaries and everything else, it is an ongoing deficit to the organization that that liability is there, which you kind of take a blind eye at because you don't know when that PTO will be taken in future years. So yes, I appreciate you carving out that increase isn't up to the CEO. So thank you.
Okay, all right, so we've had public comment, we've had some questions. Now it's time, are there comments that people want to make about these policies?
I made my comment rather than a question after Larry's question. No, this is good. I know. Wrap my knuckles. I actually very much appreciate Michael and Monica that you're going through all these policies and you're separating little P's from big P's and cleanup. I think it's a very important process. So thank you for doing this.
I have a comment. My comment is that it might be good to have some sort of a closed session or board item sometime about data protection. It's not something that I know much about, and I'd like to learn more about it. And particularly when our general counsel said that it's the largest risk.
Operational risk, because we have the whole supply risk, which is much.
Right, but operational risk. I mean, it's something I can imagine. It's something I can imagine us getting sued on. And so understanding it more would be valuable. So I don't know when that would work into the schedule. It's not like it's there's no deadline, but I just think
we can certainly factor it. So Nick Zanotto's not here, and so Nick does bring this item along with the results of our cyber audit to the audit committee in closed session, but we can certainly have him bring it to the full board in closed session as well.
Okay, I think that would be. What do other people think? Does that sound?
No, I think definitely the small p internal policy would be useful. It's good information and it's good education, and as it continues to change, after sitting through hours of ALPR license plate reader discussions and privacy on Tuesday night, I think it's an important issue that residents can care about.
Yes, broad impact.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we this is an action item, so we need to have a motion, and I noticed that there was at least the addition of some language related to severance. And is there any other that was suggested that was made?
It was the language related to severance and the statement about generally protecting customer privacy.
That's really important. I don't. So those were the two changes from what was presented to us. And so I would appreciate it if the maker of the motion would include those.
So, right, I'll make a motion that this executive committee recommends to the board to approve the proposed amendments, including the changes as discussed at this meeting regarding the human resources policy, personnel and reimbursement, and also the customer confidentiality policy.
Second by Klein.
Okay, so we have moved by Meadows, second by Klein. I think it's time for a roll call vote.
Chair Showalter.
Yes.
Director Klein.
Yes.
Tyson.
Yes.
Martinez Beltran.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. That carries unanimously.
Your randomization plan keeps us alert.
All right. I think that's really good. Especially on things where you think about, okay, well, what's the number here? And it determines your vote. It does happen on time sometimes. Okay, so now we move on to number 5, energy products and clean accounting, which is informational. And we have quite a bit of time devoted to that. 40 minutes, which is good, which means we can have a nice discussion. And we have Britta Bradshaw here to help us. And I guess Justin.
You're welcome. Maybe before Britta starts, I can just do a little bit of introduction.
Yes.
So I think I've mentioned to the executive committee that part of my goal is to just bring the level of understanding of everything that we do, which is a very complicated kind of function that we carry out with portfolio and management, just kind of bring up the level of understanding with all the board members and the executive committee, especially since you guys are really have the opportunity to guide us before we go to the board. And so this one here is gonna sound wonky. And some of you all may already know a lot of this stuff. And so, but I hope it's just kind of reinforcing what you already know. But if you don't know, and if there's anything that we need to slow down, or if you want to ask questions, as I hate to do this to you, but as Brenda's presenting, certainly do that. But really the goal here is to be very transparent about how we define clean and what we're buying and what our goals are. And because I think that's an important discussion to have, is that not everybody understands what clean energy is. And then when you get down to several layers, it becomes even more complicated. And so this is an educational piece, and I hope that if you think there's benefit to bring this, something like this to the board, that we would do that as well. So with that, I'll hand it over to Britta.
Great.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you today about our energy products and clean accounting. So first, we'll just go over high level, what is the electric system and the grid, and then how is clean counted and reported. Talk about the different types of energy products we buy, energy attributes and capacity, and then go over our own procurement strategy and status. So high level, what is the electric system? There's 3 key words you're going to hear us talk about a lot: generation, well, 4, generation, transmission and distribution, and load. So it's a very complex system. The goals are to provide reliable and stable and on-demand power to millions of customers. Energy storage is still pretty new. So it's a complicated structure to meet customer demand every minute of every day. So energy is generated by power plants, and that's everything you know: hydroelectric, natural gas, coal, solar, and wind. That's the generation. Then it's transmitted across the transmission and distribution system. We call that sort of the poles and the wires. And then it goes to serve load. And so that's our customers turning on their lights, their computers, their ovens, and all their electrical appliances. And so what is SVCE's role in all of this? We are the generation provider. So we sign those contracts for clean power plants and renewable resources as they're generated. They're then put onto the grid, and the grid is managed in our territory by PG&E. And then from the grid, they are delivered to our customers. We play that generation piece. So talking about the grid and the electrons that we're putting onto it. So the grid is like an electron pool. All the generation resources that are added onto the grid are blended together. So we need kind of a complicated system to account for those electrons, because everything is really being pulled together. We're putting clean electrons onto the grid, but natural gas facilities and other conventional energy are also putting energy onto the grid. And our customers are getting energy from that grid, but not necessarily from us, just from the pool of everything that's been provided. So how does the power flow, and how do we track attributes? How do we account for those electrons that we put on the grid on behalf of our customers? Once they're delivered to the grid, those electrons, we call them green or brown, the clean ones or the conventional ones, they're indistinguishable from one another. We don't own the individual electron. We can't physically track it and know, who provide energy or who consumed energy from a certain power plant. So for regulatory compliance and substantiating marketing claims, a load-serving entity like us use our contracts and ownership of certain attributes associated with supplying that electricity. So we have contracts specifying that we own the right to claim certain attributes, such as renewable energy credits, and the owners of those attributes get the claiming rights to those environmental impacts. And there are sort of forms of paperwork that go along with this, like renewable energy certificates or RECs, e-tags, and other contract documents that back up those claims. So what is a renewable energy certificate, or a REC? I'll probably be calling it REC going forward. This is defined by California law, and it's a certificate of proof that a certain unit of electricity, a megawatt hour, was generated and delivered by an eligible renewable energy resource. I don't think I need to go too into detail on this slide, but this is all set by law on what is a renewable energy resource and who gets these certificates and how they're used to prove any kind of sustainability claims, as well as compliance with renewable portfolio standards. Not all RECs are the same. So in California, we have portfolio content categories, which we think of as buckets of different renewable energy credits from any contract signed after 2010. So there's 3 categories: PCC1, PCC2, and PCC3.
I have a question. Can you back up a little bit?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, on this certificate, I see that it has megawatts and it has pounds of carbon presumably removed. So who decides that?
That is a good question. I don't know if it's, I don't think it's pounds of carbon removed so much as avoided.
Avoided. Oh,
I
of
don't-
course. Yeah.
I don't know who decides.
Oh,
Probably
okay.
a fixed ratio.
It's a fixed, yeah, it's, for the purpose of the REC, it's somewhat indifferent. They don't treat emissions associated with any of the products differently, but for the purpose of the power content label, there is an emission factor that gets from renewables, such as geothermal. So,
Okay, 'cause that has.
yeah, and that's determined by CARB. That's determined by CARB.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and then the one thing that maybe we just add here too, that there's a registry called the Western Renewable Energy something IS. REGIS is what we call it. So all of these RECs that you that you procure like we do.
Monica, could you speak up? I'm sorry.
So all of the RECs that we procure have to be retired in this REGIS system. So that not 2 people can count the same REC ever.
Okay.
Okay, I have I would assume natural gas works the same way, that people put in natural gas and there's a system and people pull it out, we don't know where it came from. Is there an equivalent REC system for people that produce biogas, or is there such a thing?
For biogas, yes, I think it's through the offset program, CARB's offset program. You have to register it as an offset. But even if it becomes an RPS eligible product and the CEC deems it as eligible, then it can also generate a REC too. So if you have a biogas facility that say is feeding a natural gas plant, so you have a natural gas plant and you put green gas in it, and the green gas is determined to be green, then that facility has to be certified by the CEC as being an RPS eligible, and then it can create a PCC1 REC. So there's a whole complicated process that gets to a REC.
Okay, so it's creating an electrical REC by going to a power plant.
Right, but if you just want clean gas, like in the case of City of Palo Alto, they have a gas utility as well, and they determined that they wanted to set not a renewable standard for gas, but they wanted to be able to claim that they had, they did it through an offset program with CARB. Yeah.
Okay, so another question is, these are through CARB, so these are state things. So what about the our power purchases from out of state?
Well, she's gonna get to that.
Next.
Yeah, that has to do with these product content categories. So PCC1 RECs, we kind of see these as the best. Probably, I don't know if I should use that language, but these are RECs from facilities that are either already within California or they're delivered directly into California bundled with the energy. So it's sort of the attribute is part of the energy, it's delivered into California. So these are the best RECs to use. We procure predominantly these PCC1 RECs to meet our RPS targets.
So all the old windmills on Altamont Pass don't count for this?
So if if it's a contract from before 2010,
Okay.
they're considered PCC 0, which is just like a special grandfathered category. Anything before that it counts as PCC 1.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
That's
I think if they recontract, then it'll be PCC 1. But PCC 0, some of the grandfathered recs are also some of these category 2 or 3 recs. So category 2 recs are typically from recs from out of state where we often call them firmed and shaped, where if it's an intermittent facility like wind, sometimes in order to be delivered into California, it's kind of bundled together and made to be not intermittent, mixed with something else before it's delivered into California. And it's still kind of a 1-to-1 ratio in terms of you get 1 rec for 1 unit of electricity. But it's not necessarily real time 1 megawatt hour delivered into California right as it's generated. It's mixed and maybe substituted in with energy from another source. So these are product content category 2.
What is CBA?
Oh, sorry, California Balancing Authority. So the big one is CAISO. But since RPS covers the whole state of California, there's actually several balancing authorities, such as, Palo Alto was its own.
No, it was part of the CAISO.
Oh, okay. Sorry. But there are other balancing authorities that operate in California, but the big one is CAISO.
So maybe we could just, like, as an example, the pattern wind contract that we have, one that we talked about, the biggest project, that generates renewable energy in Wyoming, and it gets delivered to California. That is not a PCC2, that is a PCC1, because there is a direct transmission line that goes from those facilities into the CAISO. That makes it a PCC1. There's no firming that happens. As it generates clean energy, it gets delivered to the CAISO. Because remember, electricity is like instantaneous, right? So, but if that resource didn't have a direct transmission line into the CAISO, and it generated, and then the contractor or the supplier that we contracted with had the opportunity, had the requirement to deliver the same amount of energy in to us, they would have opportunities to mix it with other things. But because there's a direct physical line from those facilities to California, that makes it a PCC1. So that's a big distinction when we buy out-of-state resources.
So that sounds expensive to have a direct line. Is that expensive? Does it affect the cost of the?
Well, that's all when we get offers for renewable resources, we get a all-in cost, right? This is what it's going to cost us.
So that's the whole.
And even with all of that infrastructure that had to get built, because Wyoming wind or New Mexico wind or out-of-state wind has such a nice generation profile, it still makes more sense to bring that in and do a lot more solar storage. So that's the valuation that we do when we make these decisions. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's great.
My power management
Great.
role is coming out.
And there's a last category, which is category 3, and this is anything that doesn't meet either of those above 2. So maybe a less clear path of how it gets into California. So we historically procured a very limited PCC2 or PCC recs to achieve compliance.
Can you share an example?
Thank you, Pat.
I would say a lot of like the Northwest Hydro that we don't have a clear accounting of how it's getting into California would probably be PCC 3.
Yeah, we have a Green Prime product where we have an obligation to tell our Green Prime customers at the start of the year what the mix is going to be for their product. That's a state requirement. And we have to meet 100% of their load. And so we had a situation where we actually got way more participation in Green Prime than we had forecasted. And so at the end of the year, we didn't have enough clean resources to meet the Green Prime product. So we had to go buy a PCC3, an unbundled rec, because this is something that you can buy after it's been generated. And so in a very, very limited case, we used a piece so that we can meet the obligations under our Green Prime program. So we use it very sparingly just to meet compliance obligations. And then we have to disclose that to our customers. But if you do buy a PCC3 or unbundled rec, you will see the emissions associated with that product on our power content label because it's unbundled, right? The the rec got generated maybe in January and we reported, say, in September. And so there's not a direct connection. It's unbundled from the energy. It's just the attributes we're writing. And even the state limits the use of those to less than 10% for compliance. Yeah, and they want to basically eliminate them completely.
Don't have to pay attention to that percent because we mostly don't buy
Yeah, we
them,
don't
so
buy
we're
them.
not at risk of that in compliance.
Okay.
All right, and then one other type of attribute is carbon-free attributes. So these are clean energy certificates or counting rights, kind of similar to a REC, but for facilities that do not count as renewable in the state of California. And that's two key types of facilities, which are nuclear and large hydro. Large hydro is considered renewable in a lot of states, but not in California. Only small hydro is, and large hydro, if it's upgrades to existing dams, kind of can get into the weeds there, but typically large hydro is considered carbon-free, but it's not renewable. Renewable and carbon-free together, we count as clean. So all renewables are clean. Not all carbon-free attributes are renewable though.
So the distinction of large hydro, which is not intuitive here, is that a combination of its size or when it was built, or is it the same thing? Like if it's that large, it was built a long time ago, and so there was a desire to not really count it because it was already there.
Probably that, and environmentally, large dams are not necessarily great for the environment. And so I don't think they want to incentivize building a new large dam. And small hydro is typically considered run of river where it doesn't disrupt.
Yeah.
That's so interesting that it's really an overlay of the environmental sustainability of the technology itself that differentiates between RPS and carbon-free. I had no context.
Part of it is technology, and a lot of it is politics. When these rules.
Politics. All right.
And quite frankly, the labor had a big hand in this distinction between PCC 1 and PCC 2 and PCC 3, because labor was very much motivated to make sure that the state of California was building new resources in California. And that's why there's such an emphasis on PCC 1 products.
Sally.
So there's a lot of history about how California's renewable standard was put in place.
Okay, yeah, and water is just replete with politics, but
Yeah.
what, can you give me an example of a small hydro facility that we would have heard of?
Yeah, it's typically 25 megawatts, right?
Or less, yeah.
Or less.
Is it 25 or 20?
It's 25, I think, but I can tell you personally of an example. So we had a facility when I was at Palo Alto in Calaveras County that was owned by several cities. And it's large hydro, it's Calaveras, I think it generates like 250 megawatts, that's the capacity. But we were able to put small little turbines on some of the inlets on the creeks. And they were like 10 megawatt turbines. And so you put them on it doesn't disrupt, it doesn't change the flow of the water, it doesn't add new storage capacity. It just puts a little turbine on this inlet that comes in and it generates electricity. That's a really good application for renewable resources, right? If you're not damming anything up new. And so that way they were able to count all the renewable from that. We also have here at SVCE, we have a contract with the Western Area Power Administration where we get a share of the large hydro that gets generated from that facility. The majority of it, of Central Valley Project, does not count towards renewable. It's all large hydro, right?
Yeah.
But they have small installations of turbines throughout their system. They're very long, expansive, and we get to count those very few RPS recs from that facility too. For us, it's very, very, like less than 1% of our needs, but we count it. So,
Yeah, okay, so it's like almost a mill pond.
Yeah.
So how would large hydro as a form of storage work in this? Let's say somebody wanted to raise the height of San Luis Reservoir, just assuming. And then, it's not riparian, you're pumping it in there, it goes in there. And then when you draw it out, let's say you're collecting power because of the extra ed that you're developing. Is that large hydro?
That's storage, and Helms is a big example of one that PG&E
Pumped.
operates.
So pump storage would be pulled away from that.
Yeah, so
That was not
pumps,
the
if
first
you're using energy to pump the water in,
Yes,
then it's considered energy storage. It's not considered generation.
Got
You
it.
have to use energy to get the water in.
Interesting. So pump storage is energy storage, not generation.
Correct.
Oh, this is really fascinating, okay.
And very expensive,
But-
I should say.
well, yeah,
Large hydro is great because it kind of has built-in energy storage,
yeah,
Yeah.
which is, really valuable. All right. So, getting into how do we define clean energy and report on it, and what are the energy products? So defining and reporting clean. Our clean energy target is set at 100% of retail sales, including our losses. So a certain percent of energy is lost as heat over transmission and distribution lines, measured annually. And we don't have a clean capacity target. We'll get into energy versus capacity in a future slide. There are a lot of reporting requirements and ways that we show that we're meeting our clean targets and goals. So the first is the annual power content label that we sent to the California Energy Commission and our customers, and we'll see that on the next slide. There's also Renewable Portfolio Standard, or RPS. We have both a compliance report where we show past looking how we met the compliance, and a plan where we show how we plan to meet compliance going forward. And then there's California's integrated resource planning. We have reports that we give to them. We have the compliance plan for midterm reliability, and in the future, it'll be other procurement decisions where we show the compliance to date towards meeting those targets. And then we also have, again, a plan, an RPS plan that we submit showing how we plan to meet the future targets. And here's our power content label. So this is how we show, primarily how we show our customers what we can procure. It's been in place since 2009, but AB 1110 implemented in 2020 is when it became mandatory, not voluntary, where we show it's kind of the nutrition facts of the energy we deliver to customers. And this is for the past year, what percent from each source of energy our energy that we delivered to our customers was from, and whether, what the total emissions were, if it had any emissions included with it.
And where do people find this?
On our website, and it's
And we
mailed.
mailed
And it
Yeah.
was directly emailed or mailed.
And I think Pam's bringing an item to the May board meeting where she's gonna go and do a deep dive on the power content label. Is that May?
Yeah, it's what customers see from us, like what we have to send them proactively.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
did you choose?
Did you say we email this to them?
Mail and mailed, and it lives on our
That one.
website.
Thank
Sorry, I missed Yvonne's question.
Email and mailed on the website. Just to clarify.
Okay.
All right, so I just said, did you choose our worst year? And I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about it.
That's because it's so,
It's our most recent
Yeah.
attested to power content label. The board hasn't attested to the 2025 one yet.
Okay.
It's much different than this one.
I'm gonna put it on there and said draft or unattested,
That
one of
one's
the-
attested to, that's 2025.
No, I'm just saying.
Oh,
Yeah.
2023.
Yeah.
2023.
I could have done
A little lipstick on the.
You can tell I'm not in marketing.
Not marketing.
All right, so let's talk about the products we buy and sell. So we sign a mix of long-term contracts and short-term agreements that include any one, two, or three of three key product categories. So there's energy, attributes, and capacity. Energy is the key one. This is the product that we buy in order to deliver the electricity to customers. It's what's scheduled onto the grid from generating facilities. Attributes often come along with the energy, and they are the product that we just talked about, the REX, or the carbon-free attribute, that's provided for every megawatt hour of energy generated. And they're used to measure and account for our clean energy generation to meet state mandates and to meet our own targets. And so these energy and attributes together comprise clean energy, basically. These are the products that we use to show that. Capacity is a third product, and you'll hear the phrase RA, which is resource adequacy. That's the primary capacity product. And this is a market product where every load serving entity in California is required to sign a certain amount of these contracts where we're basically paying a power plant, a generator, just to exist and to be available to the market. We're not necessarily buying their energy. Sometimes we'll have an RA contract where we're specifically not buying their energy. RA just means we are paying them to exist and to offer to the grid in case they're needed, in case of a reliability event, if there's a heat wave and everyone turns on their air conditioner, if suddenly Diablo Canyon is down or any power plant is down and the grid needs more electricity, the state makes sure that we have above and beyond what we expect to need as these signed RA contracts. And so the off-taker of an RA from a generating facility is not necessarily the off-taker of the energy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a compliance requirement and doesn't represent the energy we deliver to customers. So clean energy, as I mentioned, it's the combination of the energy and the attributes. The demand for these attributes is largely driven by state laws and regulations. So right now we have an RPS obligation, Renewable Portfolio Standard, which requires us to get those RECs. Starting in 2035, RPS will also require us to include carbon-free. And so then those carbon-free attributes will also be, demand will then also be driven by state requirements. The obligation that every load serving entity has is set based on our share of retail load in an annual megawatt hour basis. Demand is largely driven by state mandates. But there are companies that have sustainability plans. There are load serving entities like us that choose to go above minimum compliance. And so that's also driving some of the demand for these products. Now looking at our SVCE's own procurement strategy and our historical power mix. So we are driven or our strategy when we're procuring is driven again by the regulatory requirements and also by our own board goals. So these first two items up here, SB 100 and SB 350 together are what we consider RPS, Renewable Portfolio Standard. These are the state requirements. SB 100 requires 60% clean energy or renewable energy by 2030, 100% carbon-free by 2045, and that's when we add in that large hydro and nuclear and carbon-free products to help us meet compliance. SB 350 was added on to that to say that at least 65% of that renewable energy must be from long-term contracts, which are defined as anything 10 years or longer.
Yes, a question about that. So the 10-year or more contracts are important because stability of supply, is that, what's driving that one?
I think it's incentivizing, Monica, I'm curious your thoughts too, but incentivizing more renewable energy to be built in California. So these, generators need long-term contracts in order to be financed.
Cancel
out. Okay.
But SB 350 and SB 100 don't specify between new and existing. They just say renewables. That's when the MTR orders came in, because they're like, wait, we also want you to build a whole bunch of new stuff too. So,
okay.
Yeah, so the next one here is MTR, which is midterm reliability, and really any procurement mandate under the integrated resource plan through the state is, as Monica said, it's focused on ensuring load serving entities are procuring new build resources to make sure that the state is getting new steel in the ground, renewable resources. And then the last goal that we think about in procurement is our board targets. So our own board target is 100% clean, including the line losses, 75% renewable by 2030 and 100% renewable by 2035.
And just to also clarify, the board has never mandated a certain percent of that coming from new or existing resources. It's just clean.
More about what I think about when I'm doing procurement. So again, thinking about those requirements, the state RPS and clean targets, the state reliability mandates. I'm also procuring capacity and trying to meet reliability, our board clean targets, and then also our energy risk management policies, which kind of set the guardrails around how we can procure. Our goal is to create a least cost, best fit portfolio to manage risk. And we do that through a mix of short and long-term products. We don't want all long-term or all short-term, and we don't want to lock everything in a single moment of time. And we're looking for price diversity. We have a mix of contracts. Some of our short-term contracts are index price, which means we are going to pay market price sort of in the real-time market versus fixed price, fixed and advanced price contracts, which is all of our long-term contracts and some of our short-term. As Monica said, we want a mix of new and existing resources. We want diversity of resource technologies. We can't have a portfolio that's entirely solar. We also want location diversity and developer and supplier diversity, and that really helps not put all our eggs in one basket.
And our hedging strategy is a different overlay on this, so.
Yes, so that's in our energy risk management policies, and most of the way that we're hedged is through the contracts that we sign in order to meet just our clean energy, mostly our clean energy goals. Our PPAs, they are fixed price, so they are hedges. And above that, if we find need for additional hedge based on our board energy risk management policy, then we will procure additional hedge products. All right, and this is what our power mix has looked like over time, and what we're not what we're projecting going forward, we have signed going forward. We still have uncontracted energy that we intentionally don't want to be under contract too far in advance, that we're looking at for 2028 and beyond. But you can see that there is a lot of large hydro in our portfolio, a lot of wind in the earlier years, and we're adding a lot more solar. You can see in 2024, we did have more unspecified power from the grid based on our board adopted decision there to not meet 100% clean in 2024 specifically. So aside from 2024, 100% of our retail sales are met with clean energy. I'll go forward.
Where's the large hydro going?
Where's it from?
No, where's it going? It's
Taking it
disappeared.
out.
Oh, so this is what we have currently contracted, I think, and so we will likely, a lot of this is allocations from PG&E, and I think we will likely get more allocations from PG&E, and those have not yet occurred.
Yeah, in the early years, we were also buying, in addition from, we didn't start getting allocations until I think like 2022 or 2023 from PG&E, but we have been buying a lot of large hydro from other facilities in California. Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of other CCAs adopted similar clean policies to us. And therefore, the ability for us to procure these large hydro resources in the market kind of went away. We had a big 5-year contract when we first started. And when that contract went away, it was really hard to replace it because there was other demand for it. But we continue to look for those resources. They're just very popular right now.
And biomass, what's the story on biomass?
We had one contract for biomass that extended. Chris, when did the biomass, the Rio Bravo contract end?
It ended 2025 December, so it rolled off at the end of this last year.
There's just not a lot of new biomass that gets built. It's relatively expensive. If you think about the fuel source for biomass, it's a lot of the material that exists in the forest and they have to collect that and,
Is that the Fresno thing? I
Yeah,
thought
that's
it was
the
a lot of
Rio
agricultural
Bravo.
Stuff too.
yeah.
I told you about the macadamia nut tests in
Yeah.
Hawaii that would qualify, right?
Yeah, but it does qualify, new biomass does qualify for midterm reliability procurement orders, right?
Yeah.
And so when we do our solicitations, we ask for everything and we just don't get a whole lot of offers there because I think it's just not that viable to top up the cost.
Can I also ask, looking on the uncontracted years, it looks like large hydro disappears, which I know that you mentioned, but also the uncontracted energy is a little bit larger in 2030. Is there something that we lose between 2029 and 2030?
It's largely that we don't have I'm not sure if we have any long-term contracts rolling off. I think it's largely just that we don't have those short-term contracts in place yet. Because again, we do like a mix of long-term and short-term contracts. And so we will likely be filling a lot of that need with short-term contracts.
And we also have load growth that is projected, that the
Thank you.
state is telling us
Yes.
as well.
Right.
Significant load growth.
Okay.
Is what you said earlier about the large hydro buying it and it was easier and now it's harder also apply to wind? Because what would happen there? It was big and then it shrank and then that we're getting new, which is great.
Yeah, I would say prices for a lot of.
I'm guessing that's what happened.
I think we had a presentation. Well, maybe we didn't share it, but yeah, definitely we're not seeing as many offers for new wind build in California. And very little coming from out of state. A lot of it has to do with the PTC. And so those production tax credits, they essentially went away for wind and for solar for that matter. And so that's really driving the lack of stuff that we're seeing. So
But more what I meant was 2017 to 19, there was a lot of wind that now somebody else has bought. I think that's what I meant, is what it looks like.
Yeah, I think
that and PG&E, a lot of what we were buying in the early years, just to be quite transparent, was coming from PG&E as well.
Yeah.
So PG&E was marketing excess renewables from their portfolio, and they're just not doing that anymore.
Yeah, though as Monica said, we're seeing load growth, so this graph is normalized to 100%, and so maybe things aren't shrinking so much
Oh,
as
interesting, yeah.
our load is growing.
And I was thinking about that as we're looking at this, so this is actually a very good graph, but if we could see the direction of load growth sort of at the top of the line, there we go.
Wow,
Okay.
maybe
Okay, so
skipping over.
because then we can compare the changes in the proportion versus the absolute change that is going on, but
Yeah. So I
okay,
just
there we
skipped this
go.
slide and I
Yeah,
can go back
perfect,
to this,
perfect.
but this shows that top dotted line is our total load. And so that's our clean target. And so aside from 2024, we are meeting that clean target. We're going above that clean target to cover losses. And we're on track to meet our RPS. The bars in the middle are the state and our agency RPS target. Our agency is above the state target. And you can see here the mix of short-term and long-term contracts in our portfolio. So obviously, when we first started out, we couldn't go sign a ton of long-term contracts. And so we were more heavily reliant on short-term contracts. We have more long-term contracts in place and more that are going to continue coming online, but we still do want to be using some short-term contracts as sort of a form of price hedging. And so in those later years, we'll probably be adding short-term contracts. And then I'll go back, and this is a look at our historical RPS position. And so the first graph shows those product portfolio content categories of RECs. And so you can see how in the earlier years, we depended a little more on PCC2 and PCC3 RECs, but now we're very heavily reliant on the PCC1 RECs. The second graph shows our mix of how we're meeting our RPS specifically through short-term and long-term contracts. And so again, we're adding a lot more long-term contracts on to meet RPS. Both these graphs, you can see they say they have the CP3 and CP4 totals. Those are compliance period 3 and compliance period 4, because RPS is not measured annually, it's measured on compliance periods, which are like 3-ish year periods, where you just need the total at the end of the period to meet the mandate.
So, The short-term contracts less than 10 years, what do they tend to be? Or are they highly variable? Like, are they usually all 3-year contracts or what is a short-term?
Highly variable,
Highly variable,
anywhere
okay.
from 1 month to
Oh,
5-ish years.
okay.
You know what I don't see is a giant pandemic blip, and I kind of would expect that. I don't know exactly what to
Load
expect.
or what?
Something would, wasn't there a lot? There was, I would think, yes, load. Like people's behavior and all of that would change, and so that's.
You're trading off closed businesses versus or residents at home, so
Well, I guess that's the answer, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it ended up sort of, because I think in terms of transportation fuels, when you expect that to be a big
oh
thing.
yeah, definitely
So there, but not here.
greenhouse gases related to transportation
Yeah,
drop dramatically,
yeah.
but load is.
Yeah, I think we shared that graph too, right? At the last decarb update. I think we showed that we did have a dip in 2021, but then it just came back.
We thought
up
we
as
were
well.
doing so much better that year.
Yeah. Maybe if you can pause on that next one, there, the next one.
Oh.
Yeah, the one thing that we're not showing here is the mix between new and existing. But for our long-term PPAs, all with the exception of one geothermal, one wind, and the stuff that we bought from PG&E under the VAMO, all of it is new resources. So, and you know, the geothermal and the wind, we want to have those resources in our portfolio, even if they're existing, because they just provide such value.
Yeah, we will need new resources to meet those IRP compliance requirements, but absolutely still interested in existing resources too. All right, and this is the last slide and just shows our power supply cost drivers. And so the energy cost here, the blue portion, is our PPA costs. So we do have a lot of PPAs, so a lot going towards that. And then the red is our resource adequacy, our capacity. This is a mix of short-term RA deals as well as long-term battery contracts. And then the green is the RECs and purple is carbon-free. It gets added on top. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, I mean, just one thing to note is like 2025, obviously costs were really high. And 2024, they could have been much higher, but the board decided not to spend, directed staff to not meet 100% clean. And so we avoided some expenditures for 2024. But I will note that, you know, 2025, the price of all these attributes determined the market price benchmarks for 2026 and therefore a very high PCIA in 2026.
Or something?
Yeah. Well, they came down quite a bit between 2025 and 2026.
What's in the ISO charge? Is that administrative?
Well, there's a lot of stuff there. There's, I don't know if Chris can elaborate, but there's a bunch of what they call general management costs, GMC charges. So this is what we have to pay the ISO to make sure that we balance load and supply in real time. Chris, I don't know if you want to add anything there.
Yeah, that's basically just it. I don't know if you guys really want to dig into it, like what accounts for GMC. It's very dry.
Well, it seems like it's, you know, it's kind of almost an administrative infrastructure for the system. And so I was just interested that it's not constant.
No, there's 2 years doesn't show.
Yeah, 2 years it doesn't even show. So that's what I was confused. And Chris, thank you for joining us here. So why does it vary so much?
I would go need to look at those specific years, but we can get back to you on that. GMC is a rate, but there's other costs that are factored in. And so you can net out your FISO charges if you are providing more product to the market at that point in time. And so that's pretty high level explanation for something that I would need to go see the data to give you a full accounting of what happened.
Yeah, and the ISO, because they're charged with making sure that their balancing authority is always balanced, they have they can allocate costs, like what we call pancake cost, if there are shortfalls in any place. And then, so there's a cost allocation that happens at the CalISO if they have to go out and procure additional resources to balance that load. And so some years, maybe that happened. And that's why we have higher GMC costs as well. So,
Well, I'm with all the things that are happening in the federal government, I'm really concerned of sort of these background agencies that, most people aren't very well. And so this is, so we really need this to have our system work properly.
right.
So it's all a state-run thing, isn't it?
Right, well, the CalISO is a corporation, and it's governed by a governing body that is appointed by the governor. But they have to operate in a very competitive market because they're not the only game in town. Like loads, not us, but things like Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, Sacramento Municipal Utility District, they don't have to participate in the CalISO if they feel that the CalISO's fees and charges are not competitive. They conform their own balancing authority, like SMUD and LA did do. And so they have a motivation to be competitive and to attract participants into their market. And so they have to be competitive. They're not run by the federal government. They're run essentially by this governing agency, but really they run as a business.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just concerned that it's not
No.
essentially something that's potentially on the chopping block by the
No.
federal administration or at risk.
No.
Okay.
If somebody was gonna top them, it would be the governor of California, and I don't think that would happen.
No.
Because then we would have an outage problem.
Yeah, okay. So,
And they operate under federal standards, but Monica is right. It is not a federal entity.
okay.
So the standards could change. The federal government could put pressure on them. There's FERC jurisdiction there, but it is not a federal entity itself.
So my question is from back at earlier when we were talking about the electrons. And so particularly at the beginning or earlier in SVCE, I back when I still used to look at Nextdoor, which I don't anymore, it's just horrible. But anyway, the naysayers, you're on there?
Of course, once a month.
Oh, well, we're getting summaries now. It just, anyway, no, let's not digress. So the argument was that SVCE may be clean, but it was all a shell game because the grid itself was still dirty. My response when I've had conversations with people about this, and you can coach me on maybe a better response, is that, well, because of those putting in more and more clean electrons and driving the technology and the supply, the grid overall is getting cleaner and it's moving the effort forward. Is that correct? Okay. So what might be helpful, and I don't know if there is a measure of this, is to show that, again, I don't know how you define overall grid. Is there a California, can we see the cleanliness, not of our purchases, but as a whole, what the grid, because we are driving, it's an investment in the technology to drive the not just the cleanness, but also the stability. Remember the orange days and no power was, and the outages, and that year was a terrible year. And we've had a robust grid since then too, so.
So
there's
there's a number
okay.
called the grid intensity factor.
Where is that?
You see it,
The first white line, right, or the,
Greenhouse gas, the greenhouse gas
that one.
emissions
Yeah,
intensity.
so that's the CO2.
Yes.
Yes, so if you go all the way to the right where it says.
Oh,
the-
California utility average.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's that, but yes, the state does track that. And if we were to go back and look at all of the historical ones, that number has been reducing. Now, it can fluctuate year to year depending on how much hydro is available and how much nuclear is available, right? In a dry year, you're going to have less hydro and you're gonna rely more on natural gas for energy purposes on the grid, and it'll go up. So the grid has one, and we always endeavor to be better than the grid.
Yeah.
But that's that. And then the other thing too that's really important is the integrated resource planning process. And in May, Marin's gonna bring a presentation to the board about our next integrated resource plan, which is a mandated planning process that we have to do. And then the board, she'll bring something for approval. In the integrated resource planning process that the state sets, we have to show a clear path, not just us, but all of the load serving entities in California to reduce our overall emissions associated with the electricity sector. And so the state air resources, the CARB, sets through what's called a scoping plan or scoping memo. They set how much of the greenhouse gas reductions have to occur in all of the different sectors. So there's electricity, transportation, and built environment. And they set that target, and they set it really aggressively for the electricity sector. I think we have to achieve 8 million metric tons by 2045, and then we have interim targets. That's the biggest driver that we have, is those greenhouse gas reduction targets associated with the scoping plan. That goes back to the big climate initiative, or what do we call it, AB, what was it, AB 37?
32.
32. I was close, I was in the 30s. Yeah, so that's what set the initial greenhouse gas reduction targets. So that number has to go down by law, and it has been going down. But we do have some years where it fluctuates because of the mix on the grid. So, yes. And Marin's gonna go over that next month and then June with you all, so.
And AB 32 was like 2010?
2006.
2006, okay.
And it says that we have to reduce emissions by X percent of 1990 levels by X year by 2045. I don't memorize this stuff anymore, but I used to memorize this stuff.
Okay.
Can you put it back on slide 22? Because I'm thinking about this in terms of the total emissions, and also the fact that our CEO keeps saying that we don't need more rooftop solar. We can inexpensively produce solar in these larger facilities in the desert. And it's closely tied in with the storage, because I've seen numbers at the last CCA about the curtailment, and I watched the CAISO pricing, and when it's negative in days like maybe today, like springtime, not much air conditioning, it's going to be sunny. And so just to help me understand this chart here, okay, this might be tricky. Let's say today we contract for a giant storage-only facility in 2028. How does that affect this chart? I'm trying to think whether that reduces our RA cost, or whether the RA cost folds into that, because it doesn't change our energy cost. So how does that change this chart?
So our can I try? Yeah. Yeah, and maybe Chris, you can help me too. But in the 2028 bar that you see there is our projection of what it's going to cost us to serve load in 2028. Mm-hmm. And all of our contracts have different attributes as pointed out. So we factor in, it's got a fixed price, and we say, okay, it's able to meet this much energy, it can meet this much RPS. And we also have an RA component. If it has storage, then we know what the cost of that storage is going to be, because it's usually charged on a KW per month charge. And so we factor that in, and we know what the state's going to tell us that we can count for that storage based on what they call the effective load carrying capability. So that's a number. We have a nameplate capacity, and then we have a multiplier. So if we sign a 100 megawatt storage facility, we may be able to count 30 megawatts of that for resource adequacy. For the storage component of it too, we know that the solar part of it, we know that that's going to generate a certain amount of energy that year. And so we have a fixed price that we pay for it. That gets factored into the blue line. And then we figure out how much we don't figure out how much we're going to pay for RPS, because it's just part of that cost. But then they also have some resource adequacy associated with solar. And so in this case, say it's 100 megawatts of solar, the state will tell us that we can count maybe a megawatt of that. So the multiplier on that is like maybe 1%, or maybe it's 5%, but it's very low, because solar is not a reliable resource for reliability. And so all of those costs that we've contracted for, plus what we haven't contracted for, get factored into that blue line for 2028. For something that we signed today.
Okay.
And then if we haven't signed something, if we have white space, then we assume a market cost for that. feeling that cost.
Yeah, I'll just add it. It ultimately depends on price, right? And the value of the contract and how this would impact it. So this says short-term and long-term in it. So as you look out in the future, right, we have load growth, which means we're more exposed to the market, which is factored into these costs. And so it's a big, complicated problem to solve.
I guess what I'm getting at is,
I just want to, once, I don't know if it would, I'm going to have to jump soon, and I don't know if that will impact your quorum or if you're okay with that. So I just wanted to give you a heads up.
We're okay.
No, I
We're
think
good.
we're
And
about to
thank you
finish.
so much for your participation. Do you have any last minute questions?
I do not.
Great.
Sorry.
So just the number at the top, so 2028, does that mean around $90 per megawatt hour is our total delivered cost for
Or
us?
per unit cost.
Per unit cost.
Yeah, so if you multiply that by say 4,000
So when
kilowatt
we
hours,
invest in a storage-only facility, I assume the costs go into RA, but
yes.
do they subtract RA purchased costs? I mean, do we have to buy RA?
Yeah,
And
so
so
we're not 100% covered yet.
And so it's not a net increase, is it an increase and a decrease?
Yeah, so that includes like projected contracts. So if we sign a contract that's in line with what we projected, it would stay exactly the same.
Yeah, this is our projected cost to serve load. It's to meet all of our obligations,
Yes.
which includes what we've committed to and what we haven't committed to. Because we estimate what it's going to cost us to meet that portion that we haven't committed to yet. We can break those out separately, but we don't like to show what we haven't
You're
committed to
already
yet.
showing a
right.
lot here.
Yeah.
So,
Right, yeah.
right, all right, that concludes my
Negotiation
questions, thank
power.
you. Was that the next one? Hope so.
Really
It's useful.
excellent
Very good.
presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Pam, for help on it.
Will
Yeah,
we get-
I did have a question on that last line. You see it just subtly going up every year. From 2026 to the 2030, do we anticipate the incline to stay at the same rate, or with what? I know that it's volatile, but I'm just saying, is there any kind of?
Yeah, the market is really tough right now, especially for new long-term contracts, which we have to sign to meet our integrated resource planning procurement requirements. We have to sign new build contracts. Prices are going up for those. They lost tax credits. It's a tight market, yeah, so.
And the CEC is projecting that our load is going up quite significantly.
Yes.
So that's also driving the size of that blue bar. Because remember, it's P times Q.
Right. Okay.
by
Thank
the-
you.
By L. All right, yeah, so this was, a deep dive. I don't know if you think that this would be worthy to share with the board. It might be too detailed. I'll defer to the board chair on this. We can certainly simplify it too.
I think it has a lot of value. It's just,
A workshop maybe.
it's a workshop or an info only item and then maybe a workshop later. Or you offer to not to create a whole bunch of additional work, but those that are interested in a deeper dive, come back to staff, and maybe that's the best way. It's like, leave as an exercise to the student, that if they really have additional questions, come back to you and staff to do that. Because I do think, easily you throw in questions from 13 board members and conceivably
3 hours.
this is a 2 or 3 hour presentation. It's useful, it's definitely useful. I don't know if it's better simplified or better just give it to staff or give it to the board as info, and we can talk more, but I do think it's, at least it's an info item. I don't think it's either a workshop or something else.
It could possibly be a webinar. That might work as well. I think it is really valuable information for the board to see. But it's technical, for sure. You
Yeah.
got to be drilled in.
Absolutely.
There's, I think, a public comment too. I don't know if we can, we're supposed to ask about that comment.
Oh, okay, public comment.
Okay,
Mr.
so,
Carney.
could you put slide 22 back up, please? So I understand much of this, but the resource adequacy part has always been a little bit puzzling to me. So let's use the example of the upcoming wedding and reception for Sally's daughter. So let's suppose they invited 100 guests, they got 50 yeses and 25 nos, and 25 people didn't respond. They're trying to figure out how much champagne they need to provide. And so what's the resource adequacy number to make sure that all of the guests are properly lubricated by the time the reception is over? And is curtailment of the pouring of the champagne a viable option as opposed to buying way too much champagne that you'll never be able to use? So how confident are you that the state has set resource adequacy goals that make electricity affordable? I see these big red chunks. And there's a period where it seemed like they decided that it had to go up for 3 years and now it's going down. Is there a potential political lever to say that the state needs to do a little bit more focusing on curtailment of demand rather than always having 99.999% chance of being able to deliver that last electron?
That's a really good question. And I think it's all of the above. I think it's both. I think there is a real big effort to see how much demand we can flex through not just an Amber Alert like we did on September 6, 2000, whatever that was, 22, but actual real hardware that we can communicate with to reduce load and or modify load, right? So that everybody's not using load at the same hours. So that is a big part of what the state would like us to do, and certainly a part of what we're trying to evaluate through our programs. How much load can we actually flex to avoid buying another megawatt of resource adequacy or capacity somewhere else, right? So I think that's definitely, but the reality is that demand response or load modification programs will not solve our champagne need, right? You need to buy champagne because people need to drink it at a wedding to have fun. So yes, so that's, and the state itself has really reformed how it requires us to buy resource adequacy too. So leading up to 2025, we only had to demonstrate resource adequacy on what was called peak months or peak period of the year. Now we have this new construct called slice of day, where we have to show that we have enough capacity to meet every hour of the typical month for the whole year, right? So that construct really was driving the big red part. But now we brought on so much new capacity, especially in the form of storage. Like even the state is just completely surprised about how much new capacity we've been able to bring on so fast. And a lot of it driven by CCAs, quite frankly. We brought on the majority of it, not just through the procurement orders, but through our own directives as well. And so we have so much storage that even the curtailment numbers are going down now. And then the next big step is this regionalization, where we're going to expand the footprint of where we can share those resources throughout the Western region. And that's going to also reduce curtailment quite a bit as well. And perhaps maybe long-term the need for additional resource adequacy products. So it's a big combination of a lot of things, Bruce, but I think that you can see that it's projected to be much lower than it was in the past.
Okay. All right.
So will the agenda packet said that this, this PowerPoint would be available on the website. Can you share?
Yeah.
Can you send, it's now available?
Yes.
You can send the link. Okay, yeah, so, because that was very helpful. So, good.
I was making last minute changes and I apologize.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yes.
That's sort of, I think, what the purpose of this committee is. But I was wondering about talking about what's the best venue for sharing this information. And what are kind of our, I know we have a workshop planned, one workshop planned at least in the next 3 or 4 months for something. I seem to do, I mean, there's this special meeting on the 15th, or it's a special time. It's not a special meeting. It's a special time. Do we have any workshops scheduled or?
We have not scheduled anything going forward, we can schedule a study session. So we're trying to update some board onboarding materials as well, including creating kind of a fundamentals onboarding. I know some of the board members, some of our new alternates and board members are actually attending the Berkeley Haas training this week. I know Zoe was in there too, and Zoe's there both as a student and as a spy to see what we can kind of adopt in terms of our own onboarding package. But this is probably something that we can do for all of the board. And so we can do a fundamentals and then a deeper dive on our power procurement efforts and on our programs as well. Maybe we look at folks' calendars for maybe August or September, June. We're like really busy through June right now. And then July, we take a break.
You're moving too.
And we're moving to, and then August, we can look for something in August, September timeframe, if that makes sense.
Well, that would make sense. And then another venue that I thought was really good was when we had that joint meeting with other CCAs where we had the program.
The one in Mountain View.
Yeah, the one in Mountain View. Yeah,
Oh, the reach
on
codes.
the reach codes. That was, I mean, that
And we have something planned for that, right? In August.
August 31st, we're having a similar event with the Cities Association around electrification, communications, and distribution.
okay, right. Well, anyway, I just wanted to bring up that there's a multitude of kind of ways we can share to get this information out, not just necessarily as part of a board meeting, and if we wanted it to be longer. And I also think the webinar is not, that should be part of that list too. That's also a good idea.
Like a pre-recorded webinar or one where we just have to make sure we don't like violate a Brown.
No, I would say, so a seminar where it's a remote meeting
Yeah.
is allowed within the jurisdictions. So as long as the majority, the quorum of the board members are within the district, we could do it that way also. And I think that might be valuable because then it's less overhead of food and scheduling and all the other stuff that goes with an event and it's basically create a 2-hour seminar
Get
on.
alternates more interesting.
It's a
Right,
class.
and it's also, it's a class and it's alternates online also, and yeah, I do think that there's value that would actually work out well. Yeah,
A lot of our focus has been on the new board members, but maybe existing board members will benefit as well, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that we should consider all of these methodologies.
Right, and the problem is in the room, you always have that time ticking that you do the same thing on the seminar, but you can easily go longer and people can drop off as opposed to we're all in the room.
Yeah, so, okay, so I think that's good.
That's good feedback.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so next is committee staff remarks.
Our town had our environmental initiatives committee meeting last night. They're so excited to have the dream home at our picnic this summer. They're very
What
excited.
day is that?
It's in July,
June
early June.
7th.
There we go.
I would love extra support.
Very excited.
As Bruce shared, we had a very active Earth Day event last Saturday in Mountain View. I don't know how many people that were there, but I would think it was upwards of 1,000 before it was done. And there must have been at least 20 different organizations or city departments taking part and had a really good time. We had one of those booklets where kids got to stamp and had to go.
Passport.
Yeah, like a passport, and then they got a really nice prize at the end. And so there was, and people in our area are so competitive. I mean, really, it's kind of funny. I think about it worked where I grew up. But anyway, it works great here. And so that was good. And one of the questions that that Carbon Free Mountain View was asking was, do you think local emissions have gone up or down in the last 3 years? And or maybe it was the last 5 years.
5 years.
5 years. And, the answer was covered and you got to raise it up and see what the answer was. And the emissions have gone up, of which, obviously we're all hoping that we make them go down. But I found that, that concentration on, on long-term, what we're really here for is GHG reduction. And it was really nice to sort of see kind of a fun way to share that information with people. But anyway, there was just a lot of interest, and I'm sure, did you get to have your?
It rained.
It rained, right?
And there's lightning and landing, and so, yeah,
It really did rain.
it was a bad weekend. It rained. There are like multiple events, outdoor events that were
Yeah,
canceled.
but
We need the rain.
Can I speak to another event?
Uh-huh.
I know we're running over, but I went to the most incredible thing on, I was cajoled, I was arm twisted by Rod Sinks to attend the Fremont Union High School District Earth Day event at the Computer History Museum. And there were hundreds of high school kids and many dozens of poster board things, and it was energy, but it was also clean water and other things like this. Many clean walk bike groups, just many little groups from around the area, the bike walk Sunnyvale group, the city Sunnyvale, huge thing, tons of energy. I was really excited to go.
Is it for the Fremont High School?
It's Fremont Union High School District, which has 5 high schools in Sunnyvale, Cupertino, a little bit Los Altos, anyway.
Did we attend that?
Last year, I know we sponsored and attended. I didn't hear anything about it this year, but we may have sponsored it last year.
I wore my badge and I acted like we were responsible, but I didn't know we were.
Well, another thing that, just hoping moving forward, I went up to Climate Week on San Francisco on Tuesday, and I feel like I'm on every environmental list there is in the world, but obviously I'm not, because I didn't really get very much about Climate Week before. And so is there a way for us?
Yeah, I didn't either, but I know some staff was there.
Yeah, Climate Week is an odd one because I also know nothing about it, like unless you're like participating in an event. So I feel like once you register for a single event, then you get on a list. But it's been like this, I don't know, so if you had a different experience, but it's really something that's super hyper targeted to the city. And it's like tech companies or related organizations that just host an event. And so if you hear about a singular event, then this is my first year I ever got emails about it.
Well, anyway, I went a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I spoke at an event on Tuesday, and it was the most complicated schedule I have ever, it's very poorly put together, really, really hard to read. But anyway, I was gonna say, maybe we could put it on somebody's tickle file, and so in March, do a little bit of homework and share with the board about the fact that it's going on, because it had a lot to do with water and it had a lot to do with energy, and I think there would be, and it's mostly free. So I think there are things that board members and staff would like to go take part in, but it's
650 events.
Wow. They're all very decentralized, and so that's why it's
That's why it's very
confusing. It's just sort of these
confusing.
pop-up events that happen, yeah, as part of
Are
it.
they all in person or virtual?
All in person.
person.
Super scattered, really confusing. Yeah.
So like if we wanted to sponsor something and have it here, we could do that under the SF Climate Week.
They're all in the city.
But we could probably arrange a room in the Metro Center if we wanted to do it.
That's the event we were at on Monday.
Yeah.
Because we were there with PCE on Monday.
Yeah, and that's where
We will
BCC.
put that as a tickler, and it always happens in April.
Yeah, I think it always happens in April.
Yeah.
And people who were there are acting like, oh, well, I'm gonna spend the whole week here. I was like, what? I was very, anyway, this is not appropriate for this meeting. Okay, so we should adjourn this meeting.
Yes.
And thank you so much for your participation. It's, looks like it's 12:12.
Bruce bought these postcards.
So 2 things, if you could send